William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet and I'm here in the studio with Patti Fink. Not a good day. It's Easter. Happy Easter to everybody. Happy Passover to everybody. Our guest is on his way. That might be him driving into the parking lot right now, but Lerone's out because his dad had a stroke this week and he's with him, and we wish them the best. And you?
Yeah, I lost my brother-in-law yesterday.
Move that microphone to right in front of you. Yeah, like that. It's just not picking up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was it's unexpected and yet expected. He's 80, but lived a full life. And I'm concerned about Lerone's dad because my brother-in-law, Buddy, had a stroke in 1991, a pretty devastating stroke. And that's what Lerone's going through now. But my brother-in-law had another 30-something years after that. So that's pretty good.
He can recover from strokes, and we wish him the best. But it's a long, hard road.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a very hard road.
Yeah.
And, you know, today is an interesting day, too. It's Easter, and it's April Fool's Day.
Right.
And Aaron and I, as of today, have been together 17 years.
Oh, that's right.
Today.
Your anniversary is April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Was a big joke on Aaron.
So it was. It's a big day. Yeah, 17 years together. So.
Well, happy anniversary, and it's Passover.
Passover.
We had our Beth Albina Passover Seder last night, and before that, the night before, we had to endure Diane Litke's horrible singing. Diane, we love you, at her Seder. But, yeah, so a bunch of things going on. You had a lovely story that I thought would be perfect to start with about Ted Nugent.
Oh, gosh. I was just saying that I saw the headline about his comments on a conservative radio show that I've never heard of, so it can't be, I don't know. It's not very popular, I guess. A lot of us never heard of it. Where he called the Parkland survivors of the shooting in Florida, those kids who survived that shooting in that high school, he called them liars and soulless, that they have no
What were they lying about?
Oh, about the solutions that they're putting forward.
You know, here's where I get angry. Okay, you know, and they say, and Laura Ingraham, she apologized. She started losing her advertisers first, and that's what prompted it.
And she's taking a week off.
Wouldn't you? Taking a week off. Yeah, good. Here's where I get mad at them. Those kids, we're not going to take their solution. Who do they think we are? We're not going to take their solutions. Okay, because they're just kids. What do they know, right?
Right.
Okay, so they have some solutions. If you think there are better solutions, then propose them. We've had how many school shootings in the last 20 years?
And mass shootings, you throw those in
and mass
too.
shootings and other, yeah. Okay, so we've had all these shootings. So you think that because these proposals are just coming from kids, they're not just coming from kids. They didn't make these up. They got them from listening and from learning.
And from common sense.
Because they're smart kids. What are your more sensible solutions? Right?
Right.
And if you think there are things that we can do, so do them. Now, one of the solutions that they say, it's not about the guns, it's about, it's more about the mental health. So we need better mental health. Okay, every time they say that, how much money actually got allocated for mental health programs? I'd say, let me just do an educated guess, nothing. And do I think that will stop all the gun violence? I think it'll make some difference, Do I think it's the solution? No. But even if it didn't make any difference in gun violence, it'll help. People with mental health programs will get mental health care, and that's a good thing. So how much money are we going to allocate towards it? I'll get behind that one, won't you?
Sure. And like our friend of many, all these many years of the LGBT community, Rick Santorum, told these kids that they should be focusing on other things, better things, more practical things like learning CPR.
That's practical.
And I just about fell out because
once you're shot 5 times in the chest, a little bit of CPR really is good.
Yeah, and like to focus on how you can do something, you can help at a scene like that. And I love the kid who said from Parkland who said, once you've been shot in the head by an AR-15, and if they've been explaining this on the news a lot. The exit wound from an AR-15 is different from, say, a .22 pistol. It's a gaping hole.
It explodes the head.
And like doing CPR is not a solution. But just the very thought that he's like, let's not try to prevent this in the future. Let's just try to help after the fact, and let's just accept that this is normal and it's going to happen again and again. And if you were wise, you would be doing something to help after the fact.
Yeah, maybe if the teachers had guns. Maybe the teachers had guns. They can start shooting. So one teacher had a gun and shot a kid in his class last week, week before last. It was an accident. But that's what happens when you have a teacher with a gun in the class.
Right.
That you're trying to control. Our guest today is Jalenzski Brown. Jalenzski, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're always nice to have.
Awesome. Good to hear. I wanted to make a comment on the mental health situation.
Sure.
I think it's really important, when people buy a car, you have to get a license to use a car. We're not often taught how to use our brain and our mental space. So I think it would be great to focus on mental health. Maybe it would help not only in gun violence, but so many different things, self-esteem, HIV, various things that people would be able to make better decisions around. So I think that
we're all for better mental health care.
I think we need more of that,
But this is what galls me about it. That's their deflection. And then when push comes to shove, how much of that money actually gets allocated? There were cuts this year in mental health care on the federal level. There were cuts. So don't tell me that you're all for mental health care. You're not.
Well, and to top it all off, one of the things that Trump did when he came in office was sign a bill that notably passed our Congress to repeal the regulation under President Obama that prevented people with known mental health issues from getting a gun. So every time he stands up there and says, it's a mental health issue, we need to do better on mental health. Well, no, you made it possible for more people with mental health issues to get guns and not be stopped at that point. So I just think they talk out of both or 8 sides of their mouth.
8 sides, yes.
It's endless.
What it is, it's that they know this was bad, that people were killed as a result of somebody who shouldn't have had a gun having that gun, and they don't. The reaction to kids who are smart and not going to take it anymore and are pissed off. How do you come up against that? It's hard, but they did it, to really go after teenagers who are good, smart, and right.
And you know what someone said to me the other day I thought was so profound and made me smile, said, they're looking at solutions and they're fighting. They're Obama kids. And you think about it, these kids grew up with 2 terms of President Obama. They're 17 and 18, so they, in their formative years from, say, 9 or 10, that's who they knew as President of the United States. And these kids are fighters. They're going to, they're making a change. They're making an impact where nobody else could before. And I think that's so interesting, that observation, that they're Obama kids.
Yeah, I don't think guns are at all the problem. I think it's the people. And so it's good that they are Obama kids, because they're probably on the better end of the deal. And I think the current administration is creating more conditions for these types of things to happen.
Well, absolutely. That's putting it mildly.
The problem with our current president is he picks a position, and the next day he picks another position, and the next day he picks another position. When he first met with representatives from Parkland, he was all for some sort of sensible gun control, some kind of regulation. Let's try something, and pointed at our Speaker of the House and said, "Yeah, but you're afraid of the NRA. I'm not." And then the next day met with the NRA, and all of a sudden he changed his tune. Yeah, he is afraid of the NRA, isn't he? I want to know how they threatened him. What, they're going to take away his funding? He ran, and this is going to sound like I'm complimenting the man, he ran one of the most cost-efficient campaigns for president in modern history. He didn't win because he had enough money. He doesn't need NRA money when it comes right down to it.
Right.
And here he is pandering to him now.
See, but that whole thing kind of ticked me off too. The whole campaign, so people were sending their dollars in, and he put up, X amount of his own money. But isn't it interesting that everywhere they went, it was the Trump catering company, it was the Trump limousine company, it was the Trump, the venue. And so when those campaign dollars were paid, it was paying a Trump company for all the expenses of the campaign.
So he was recycling the dollars.
He's recycling the dollars because they come now not just to his campaign, they come back to his pocket, his personal pocket. And he did that throughout the campaign.
Even if that was money going out, he still ran one of the cheapest campaigns in modern history.
Perhaps.
My whole point is...
And money making.
He turned it into a money maker.
Yeah.
That's another point. He doesn't need the NRA money. He was right when he says, "I'm not afraid of the NRA," because he didn't need their money.
Maybe,
but apparently he is afraid of them.
Well, maybe they found a way for the NRA to make him more money, and that's what changed his mind.
Well, they're looking into that too. He took $31 million from the NRA, and some of that money came from foreigners. People who are foreign, and that's illegal.
Wasn't there an indictment or a possible indictment I saw in the headlines in the last week or so?
Well, they're investigating it for sure to see, was that just a pass-through to get foreign money into his campaign? Who knows? We'll see. But I love this week, too, that a federal judge said that the lawsuit could go forward against him on the emoluments clause. That's to me, that's exciting, because day one, him saying, "I'm no longer part of the Trump organization," that's crap. And he's taking money. He's going to, put the profit. He said the profit of those people staying at his hotel down the street from the White House and all of his other properties from foreign people. He was going to give that back to the United States. Well, no, the dollars from the operating costs too have to go. Because guess what? You're keeping that, and you can decide what is profit and what is not. So he's taking foreign money. He's violating the United States Constitution, because it's clear as a bell in the emoluments clause. So I hope that goes forward, and we see some action on that. It's time for him to go.
Hopefully he doesn't fire anybody that's investigating before they get to some truth.
we have that possibility.
Well, he doesn't learn from history. That's what Nixon did, and that led to the impeachment trial for Nixon. We're talking to Jalenzski Brown. Jalenzski works at Resource Center. Seems like that's all we have on lately, or Resource Center. Jade Lenore was our guest last week. She runs
Gender Brave, and she also co-facilitates our United Black Element program, so she kind of goes between those programs. And United Black Element is for young black same-gender loving men 18 to 29, and Gender Brave is much like it, but it's for our young trans young adults 18 to 29, and gender non-conforming individuals as well.
And all those programs come under you?
Yes.
Because...
I like to empower people, so I like to make sure people are able to live their most authentic lives and reach their greatest potential for good. And so that's really what the programs focus on, and including also Fuse, DFW Fuse. All the programs basically, they serve to educate around HIV awareness, but also bring the community together around various issues that are important to the community. So within that, there's so many things affecting HIV, so part of that is making sure people feel like their best selves, and that is a great factor in reducing their chances of contracting HIV.
One of the big things in HIV care is U equals U.
Yes.
What is that?
U equals U. So that means undetectable equals untransmittable. And so there's been several studies in the past few years around HIV positive individuals who take their medications and they reach a level of undetectable or viral suppression, which means they have very few copies of HIV in their blood. They have seen no people that reach that untransmittable stage that transmit it to their partners. And so basically it's also, you may hear it as treatment as prevention. So as long as you're taking your treatment as you're supposed to, if you're an HIV positive individual, you won't be able to transmit HIV to an uninfected person.
And I'm an example of that. Brian was HIV positive, I'm HIV negative, and he was undetectable, so it was not transmitted.
Right.
You know, and this U equals U, it's a lot of it is, it came from some studies, but all anecdotal evidence like this, like I'm saying, right, Brian did not transmit it, it supports it.
Right. Think about, don't quote me exactly on the numbers, but about 10 years ago, the CDC shifted their language around treatment guidelines. Before it was just, get on medication when there was some issues that arise. But then it was like, if there's a diagnosis of HIV, immediately, get them linked to medication as soon as possible because of the anecdotal evidence.
And one of the reasons for that also, as it evolved, some of the medication originally was very harsh.
Right.
And as it became easier to tolerate, now that it's even being used in PrEP. And let's talk a little bit about PrEP, let's talk a little bit more about this, and let's talk about your programs and empowering people, and Patti will throw in a couple of Trump quotes. And you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with Lerone, I'm looking at Patti. She's sitting in Lerone's seat. I'm sitting with Lerone Landis. Lerone's out because his dad isn't well, so he's down taking care of his father. But Patti Fink is here, and Jalenzski Brown from Resource Center. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is Rollins Gilliland, and I'm listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3, and darn glad to be doing it.
And I'm Dave Taffet, here with the late Patti Fink, and our guest is Jalenzski Brown from Resource Center. One of the things, Resource Center does two major things: Gay and Lesbian Community Center stuff and HIV stuff. So Patti, you were just saying off the air that there's a new CDC director who says...
His name is Robert Redfield. He just started on Monday. He has spent his career in research of HIV/AIDS issues. Some years ago was accused by a peer of misconduct in fudging some data in study results. So I don't know how that's going to play. But he's claiming now that we have the tools to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the United States in 3 to 7 years.
Wow.
And AMFAR, several years ago, was funding a project to end HIV by 2020. I don't think they're going to make that goal, and I think it was 2020, maybe it was 2022, something like that. But what are you hearing, Jalenzski?
Well, in the state of Texas, the state health department is putting a plan together to be ending the epidemic by 2030. So I don't know if 3 to 7 years.
Texas is behind everybody else.
Possibly.
Right.
But I mean, that with all the advances in the medicines, and then there's also some research that's coming out around nanotechnology and injectables. And so when it comes to like PrEP and U equals U, now it could be that we end the epidemic, and it's not, such a big deal as it is now, but, we still may see few cases of HIV being transmitted here and there. But if we can get everybody on board with all the medical advances, we possibly could see, a dramatic shift in the epidemic, and it not being such an epidemic and it just being an issue.
Okay, so you used a couple of terms. First, U equals U, we were talking about before the break, which is?
Undetectable equals untransmittable.
So in other words, if undetectable meaning?
Viral suppression or very few copies in an HIV positive person's blood.
Because they've been on medication.
Correct.
And that means that you are, the equals U is Untransmittable.
Yes, untransmittable. So
Meaning-
you can't pass it on to someone else. You can't pass the virus on to anyone else.
The person will still test positive for HIV, though?
Yes, they would still test positive for HIV. However, there would be so few copies of HIV flowing through their bloodstream that, even in coming in contact with somebody uninfected, they wouldn't transmit the virus.
Okay. And you mentioned PrEP.
PrEP. So PrEP is an exciting new advance. It's been around since about 2012. It's basically the use of HIV medications in HIV-negative individuals, taken daily. It's recommended in conjunction with condoms and other prevention methods. But basically, it coats an uninfected person's cells so they wouldn't be able to contract HIV. So even if they came in contact with it, there's been very few cases of anybody being reactive to HIV while on PrEP.
And you're talking about condoms still. Why when somebody's on PrEP do they still need to use condoms?
Well, I mean, PrEP is for HIV. It doesn't necessarily protect against chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and all the other nasty little boogers out there. And so, and it's important to note that, anybody with an STD, it makes them 2 to 5 times more likely to contract HIV. And so if you're out there, you're not using condoms, you could, potentially reduce the effectiveness of, your PrEP treatment if you're not using it in conjunction with condoms.
Do we know why somebody who has gonorrhea or syphilis or something like that is more likely to contract HIV?
Well, it creates more tears and holes within the skin and the internal membrane that could, create entry paths for HIV. And so, even though, it's there's a lot of people who forego condoms, and again, the research still indicates that you should use them. It's still pretty effective, but it is recommended just so that you have the greater level of protections.
There's one other thing the condoms will prevent.
What is that?
Pregnancy.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Because straight people can get HIV too.
I always tell people sex responsibly because babies and diseases are expensive. And so normally when I'm giving these types of things, I'm talking to more gay and lesbian or transgender audiences, and I'm not necessarily thinking about pregnancy. But you're right. That's definitely an important thing there.
And we have lots of listeners of all sexual orientation, so I just wanted to throw that out there, that it is good for preventing pregnancy.
And while we're speaking of pregnancy, there's a lot of research, even when it comes to undetectable equals untransmittable, and also PrEP. It does reduce the transmission of HIV from mother to child, and so those are very, very important things for someone who may be HIV positive looking to give birth. So you can still give birth even while HIV positive, due to the medical advances we see today.
We used to hear about that a lot, and in fact, Brian's house, which is about to celebrate its 30th anniversary this month, was created for kids with HIV, and we just don't hear about infants born with HIV at all. Do you know? Is there a statistic of how many kids are born with HIV in the state at all?
I don't know off the top of my head. But I know lots of mothers who, personally I know that are HIV positive, have given birth to children who are HIV negative, and they were positive at birth, the mother. So it's definitely, I don't think the numbers are very high as far as the transmission rates from mother to child.
I think it's actually, in the state of Texas, like single digit per year. It's that low, which is great, because it was a huge problem when it first started. In fact, Brian's house moved from right next door to the resource center to a much larger building right near Children's Hospital, right into the medical district, because they needed more space. Now they take care of kids that have other needs also, but
that's great.
Because there isn't that need for them to take care of kids with HIV in the same way. But that's how Brian's house started. So. You're doing PrEP at Resource Center, right?
Yes, we do offer PrEP Monday through Saturday.
And if somebody is interested in PrEP and hasn't spoken to anybody about it, it is something to consider. Not everybody who comes to talk to you is going to decide, hey, that's for me. When you're talking to somebody about PrEP, and I know that's not what you're doing yourself particularly, but you work with the people who do.
Correct.
What are they talking to them about?
Well, a lot of it's 'cause PrEP's not for everybody, so it's depending on somebody's risk, and so someone who's in a monogamous relationship that's confirmed monogamous, and both persons are HIV negative, they probably wouldn't need to use PrEP. But someone who's wanting to be in a relationship or maybe with multiple people, and don't necessarily know their HIV status, this candidate may be more likely to use PrEP. And so really we're talking to folks in their risk, and then also assessing their seasons of risk, because some folks may be, riskier now, and 6 months down the line decide, hey, I don't want to be as risky as I once was. So a lot of the conversation revolves around that person's sexual behavior and activity, so that we can make sure that PrEP is right for them.
Mm-hmm. And it can also affect couples, I would assume, where one may be HIV positive, one is not.
Yes.
And they're monogamous, and they have none of the other things you discuss, but they, in their own relationship, like similar to what you were talking about, David.
With Brian and me.
Mm-hmm. and maybe the other person isn't untransmissible.
Right.
And they want to be on PrEP.
And that's an important thing to know, 'cause some couples, who are undetectable and untransmittable still choose to engage in PrEP because they want that added layer of protection. And so, and some forego PrEP because they, feel like their partner is untransmittable and there's not going to be anything. But it's important to note, too, that someone's their ability to be untransmittable can change, depending on, their, let's say they miss a dose of their medication, that could have a spike in the virus or such. So some couples do decide to be on PrEP while being, on treatment as well, to have the extra layer of protection.
Now, do you offer PrEP at no or low cost, or?
Yes, we do. It's very low cost, and if individuals can afford it, we will work with them to ensure that, those who need it can get it. We want to make sure.
Because on its own, it's expensive.
Correct. I think the last time I checked, Truvada, which is mainly used for PrEP, the medication these days, is like $1,600 retail value.
Per month.
Per month. Plus, with PrEP, it's not just like one of those things you get and you just, pick it up like vitamins. You actually have to go for lab work. The doctor monitors your kidney levels, your to make sure that, and also monitors that you're not transmitted, not going from HIV negative to HIV positive while on PrEP, because then you can have issues with becoming resistant to some of the medications. If you
and not to speak against PrEP, if you're going to do this, there's the cost. If you have insurance, it should be covered. If you don't, there are programs that will help you cover it, but you need to go to the doctor the first year, especially 4 times a year.
Yes.
So there's lab work involved, and not everybody, most people react to the drug well, not everybody does. You have to be careful to take a medication.
Right.
I'm one of the worst people on medication. I can go on an antibiotic for 7 days, and it's a once-a-day pill, and I even mark a chart. I guarantee you at the end of the 1 week, I will have one of those 7 pills left. It has always happened to me. I don't know if they multiply in the bottle. That's what I think is happening.
You think they're having babies?
I am. They are. I am terrible at taking any kind of medication. And my doctor, who specializes in HIV, every time he's looked at me and I said, "Yeah," and I had 3 pills left over at the end of the couple of
You're
weeks.
like an IKEA trip. Like you get you must assembly required, and you get home and you put the thing together, and you have 2 screws and 1 bolt left.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you go, uh-oh.
Did I miss something?
No wonder the dresser fell over on my kid.
The great thing about PrEP, though, unlike a lot of times with antibiotics, you have to take it like at the same time. Generally, just as long as you take it that day, and so if you forget to take it at 8 o'clock a.m., just take it when you remember.
See, and when I'm on any kind of medication, I always do it if it's a morning pill that you take. With my coffee, it's right next to the coffee maker to make sure that I don't forget. I have a chart and cross it off. I'll do that. There will be a pill left over.
Oh, wow.
There are apps that can help you, too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, they have reminders.
maybe having a 5th thing remind me is what would work. Yeah. Now, the other thing that has happened occasionally is 7 pills, and in 6 days they're gone. Now, how did that happen? One of them just disappeared.
Oh, wow. 6 days, they're gone. Okay, maybe you took 2 in one day. You just wanted to double up.
Either that or one of the pills ate one of the other pills.
Oh, no.
It happens.
We recommend also, putting it, maybe by your toothbrush so you can remember, because most folks brush their teeth daily, I hope. So you can remember to take that, or if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker, keep it wherever you have those things.
So my doctor always laughs at me when I say this to him, and he says, You've just never been on medication regularly, have you? And he's not used to somebody like that. And it's like, no, I'm terrible at it.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Patty.
I was just going to say, if you were going to get, if somebody out there listening is interested in pursuing a PrEP regimen, how would they do that through the Resource Center? Would they go to the Nelson Thibodeau Clinic?
Yes, they can call our testing hotline, but they'll connect them to our PrEP services, which is 214-393-3700.
And you can find that number, I guess, on the Resource website?
Yes, myresourcecenter.org as well, and get information about our PrEP program. And then also, if you ever, come in contact with any of the coordinators, Jade Lenore, any of the, Gender Brave, United Black or Fuse coordinators, they can help connect you with our PrEP navigator as well. We now have 2 PrEP navigators, so the program has been growing because the demand has been quite high in Dallas, and which is really, really awesome to hear that folks are really wanting to take control of their sexual health. And studies have shown even the folks that are on PrEP have fewer cases of STDs as well. So it's helping reduce STD rates in some capacity as well.
That's awesome.
And Resource Center is real good. If you just call anywhere at Resource Center, they're not in this building, let me connect you, and they'll connect you to the right person in the right place. So
yeah, we have so many programs and services, so
and multiple locations also.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about some of your empowerment programs. What are you talking about by empowerment?
Well, first off, it's important to know that empowerment, it's a intervention. So empowerment itself is a CDC evidence-based HIV prevention intervention that was started by some researchers at the University of California at San Francisco at their Center for AIDS Prevention Studies. So they basically put some programs together that were more socially focused, and they helped reach folks that traditional HIV programs may have missed. And the way that they were able to do that was create more of a sense of agency amongst the community to have, let's say a drop-in space and ownership over programming activity. So basically, when it comes to empowerment, the program participants are able to come together and decide, hey, we want to, let's say, throw a barbecue. And, in throwing that barbecue, they come up with all the ideas of, from the location, the time, and decorations, the menu, all those different things. And, then it's basically a party. We focus on the social aspect, but it's more than just a party. It's a party with a purpose. So then we know that everybody that is coming, we have an opportunity to educate them around HIV. And so we use that opportunity to bring some type of educational focus, and then also whatever else the community deems necessary. There was a conversation at one of the programs just a couple weeks ago in our Gender Break program around transitioning while on the job. And so that's something that a lot of trans and gender nonconforming individuals may experience. And so they were able to come together to talk about, how can we, protect ourselves, so to speak, if I decide I want to transition and not lose my source of income. So when it comes to empowerment, it is an intervention, but we think about empowerment as really allowing people to live their greatest potential for good. And so whatever it is that we can help, even if there's something that we can't necessarily help with, we like to partner with folks who can, help these individuals live out their greatest lives.
So when you're talking about intervention, it's not the kind of intervention that Josh needs.
Which kind? Because he has so many.
I understand that, but this wasn't one of them.
So in its intervention, in this sense, it's a scientifically based, protocol that's designed on, researchers looked at many years that this has an impact on reducing HIV rates. And basically, it's kind of like the each one teach one model. The more people that get engaged with making safer sex the norm, that they can spread that message, and it becomes like the norm amongst the community. So if you have, let's say for United Black Element, it's young black same gender loving men 18 to 29. The more 18 to 29-year-olds that are in that focused demographic that are talking about safer sex, the more people that'll spread that information, and it'll just become the norm throughout the community.
Do you know how many times does somebody need to come and hear the message and engage with other people who are discussing this for it to really become ingrained and part of the way they live?
Well, I think it varies from person to person. I don't think there's like a set number, because we have some individuals who come, to our centers often, and some just come once a month. Some come every so often. We have a few individuals who, we see them very rarely, but they come, get the information, and they're going back to their communities and spreading information. And so one of the things that I always try to stress with my staff is that whether we see someone one time or many times, we want to empower that person to spread the information that they need within their community, wherever they are, to reduce HIV in places that we may not be reaching.
We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here with the late Patti Fink. And I almost said Lerone again. I'm looking right at you. But I don't have your name written down on my sheet, Patty, so how am I supposed to know who you are? Jalenzski Brown's our guest, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Hi, this is Valletta Lil, and I listen to Lambda Weekly. I hope that you will too.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here with the late Patti Fink, and Jalenzski Brown is our guest. Patty, you were just saying that you read something about the new head of the CDC.
We were just talking earlier in a previous segment about the new CDC director of the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, and the previous one had been ousted because she was basically caught buying tobacco stocks as the person who's charged with ending tobacco use.
Poor her.
But the
and
new
there's
one,
something wrong with that?
Apparently.
Oh, okay.
The new one, Dr. Robert Redfield, who's himself a physician and HIV AIDS researcher, has rejected at least 2 of the banned words at the CDC.
Yeah, and the banned words, the Trump administration came out with a list of words that can't be used, like transgender is one of them, I believe.
Right. And 2 of them were evidence-based and science-based. And he stated, "We're not an opinion organization. We're a science-based, data-driven organization. That's why CDC has the credibility around the world that it has." So he's going to use evidence-based and science-based.
So
that is a welcome relief.
It is.
This new head of the CDC is, what does he think? He's a scientist or something?
Apparently, and that.
So to treat disease, we're going to use science?
Apparently, that's.
I don't know about that.
I know it's edgy and iffy.
Sometimes we just have to look to people like Jenny McCarthy and her science-based background to tell us not to take vaccines. Things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I work with a ton of researchers, and they tend to have a lot of evidence that point to a certain cause that's helpful at times. So I think it could be a good thing. You should try it out.
At least we can say the words,
right?
Even if they're not really following it. But I'm encouraged by that.
It's really awesome because a lot of times in our grant proposals, which my programs are grant funded, those are words that we have to use because folks, tend to look at empowerment like programs and thinking, oh, these folks are just over here having fun. And some folks do think that that's what we do, but it's fun with the purpose, because we know that HIV at times can be dreary and kind of sad, and so in order for folks to want to engage, we have to reach them at a social level at which we may reach them if we're just serious all the time. And it has shown a huge decrease in HIV numbers and actually reaching folks that may have been missed by clinics and such.
And I have to apologize for asking you on our show because a lot of what we do is fun without any purpose.
Fun without. Well, that can serve a purpose too. Sometimes we just need to let loose and just let it all out. So it's an unintended purpose.
Years ago, I was thinking about my brother-in-law a lot, and before his stroke, we had taken a trip sailing in the Caribbean, and we got back, and we had a day to hang around until we left the next day, and we were just laying around the hotel suite thing, and we got into this conversation about going to dinner, and we had an argument then for about 2 hours about whether I was lollygagging or dilly-dallying.
Oh, wow.
And part of it has to do with whether you have a purpose.
Have a purpose.
If you're
Okay,
dilly-dallying,
that's
if
a good
you
thing
have
to-
a
yeah.
purpose and you're not, advancing toward that purpose. But lollygagging is kind of free.
I think
So just for your, word edification here.
lollygagging.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I think I lollygag a little bit
We
more.
lollygag on this show. A lot.
Yeah.
So we do have a purpose, is what you're thinking.
No, that's dilly-dallying.
Okay.
We lollygag.
With your empowerment programs, it's more than HIV, though.
Yes.
Because take the example of gender
Gender brave.
If you're not comfortable with, which is the transgender program,
Yes.
if you're not comfortable with who you are, you're less likely to have safe sex and to protect yourself and your partner. So in order for that outcome to happen, you need to get other things straightened out in your life too.
Right. And so a huge factor in kind of how we design programming, we think about some of the social determinants of health, someone's socioeconomic status or, where their environment that they live in or how they may be raised, plays a huge factor in their risk for contracting HIV. So we look at a lot of the underlying factors to develop our programming. And even, one of the series that United Black Element, and it's more of a agency level program that we've done is last month, which has been really, really exciting. We've done a series on racial healing. And it was a collaboration between Resource Center, some of our programs, Abounding Prosperities, and the Communities Foundation of North Texas. And what was important about that is that sometimes folks even have racial issues in engaging in HIV care. And so for us to come together and talk about those things as a community and how can we, help one another ensure that folks get the HIV care or the social support that they need without some type of racism or systemic racism preventing that from happening. So it's very important that we not only talk about HIV, but the underlying factors that can lead someone to contracting HIV.
Mm-hmm. And one of those other things, socioeconomic. If somebody is not working,
Right.
and they're not working because they can't get a job because they're transgender, and that's the reason they keep losing jobs or losing out on getting a job, you're not necessarily concentrating or concerned with other health outcomes or can't afford
Exactly.
to take care of those things.
And I've heard of some folks even turning to sex for survival, and so they may, engage in sex work and to pay bills or to, get something to eat. And a lot of times when you're engaging in sex work, you are at the mercy of whoever's paying you, and so if they don't want to use condoms, that's something. If you really want to eat, you're going to, this money is what I need to eat, so I'm going to do what this guy says or this woman says or whoever says. And so that's one of the things that we try to address as well to ensure that our individuals that come through our programs, have services and resources to overcome that. We recently did a job etiquette, job readiness type of ordeal, which I believe there's a job fair next weekend that some of the participants that went through that program are going to this job fair. It's at Fair Park, I believe, and they're going to put some of the skills that they learned at the job readiness workshop to play and see if they can overcome some of their barriers they've had in getting a job. Mm-hmm. So we think a lot about, some of those other things. So we don't always just do barbecues, which I love barbecue, even as a vegan. However, we do a lot of professional development, personal development. We do workshops around, even struggles within your faith, and we know that how religion and faith can play a huge part in somebody's overall well-being. And even having I know, David, we've even had conversations with you in the past about interfaith panels where we've had, different folks from different faiths come together and talk, and how can we push past our differences and embrace our commonalities to reach a greater good for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say with working with people who in the past have done sex work, that would have been very helpful for you, Patti, at the time.
Oh, no doubt.
So, Patti, how was that for you?
It's working out fine for her. She's doing great.
It was a moment in my career.
Okay, so one of the reasons that Jalenzski is our guest today, today's Passover, today's Easter, you're Buddhist.
Well, no, actually, I'm not Buddhist. I'm not really religious these days. I'm just spiritual. I take a playbook take pieces from everybody's playbook, but I tend not to get too ritualistic or caught up in any one religion. These days, I just have a great relationship with Source, God, Buddha, Allah, Jesus, whoever. I talk to them all, whoever's available at the moment.
And that's one of the reasons that we were able to find a guest today for the holiday.
Definitely, because this is a lot of things today.
Yeah.
I saw a meme where somebody was wrapping up grapes in that the pastel foil, like we would wrap up those chocolate eggs, because they're going to play April Fool's joke on their kids.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, ooh, collision of so many things.
And we would just roll up cracked up matzah, I guess, in tinfoil. So you open it up and the crumbs are just all over the floor. It's very sad.
Very dry, too.
Very dry. Very dry. Give me your programs. Fuse was the other one.
Yes.
Fuse is probably the program that's been around at Resource Center for the longest. Tell us what Fuse is.
So Fuse is for young gay and bisexual men ages 18 to 29, and it's a program designed to just bring that particular community together and around safer sex and other issues that may impact the community.
When you're bringing in bisexual youth, are they coming in with different issues than you're fully out, I'm gay and proud of it, and these are young, and I'm saying newly out, some of them aren't necessarily newly out because some of them have been out since they're 12 or younger. Are there different issues that they're dealing with?
Definitely. I think there are some commonalities, but there's definitely different issues, which is one of the reasons why I love working with Resource Center and working with the programs, is because there's so many different types of people and so many different things to deal with. We just recently had a conversation early March around toxic masculinity, which it was,
Amen.
it was a great conversation. It was
Once
really,
again, you're talking about Josh.
and that particular conversation, it was even on the Facebook page. There was all kind of like tensions because some folks felt like it was going to be a feminine guys bashing masculine guys, and they were like felt it was going to be an attack. But when folks actually showed up, it was just a space, and we like to create spaces where everybody can voice their opinion, even if there's differences of opinion, but everybody's opinion is welcome. And there was a couple guys there that were bisexual, and so one of the guys was talking about how he actually has a girlfriend. And, he had been with his girlfriend. He had only been with her for like the past 5 years, but then he realized that he liked men as well. And so he, talked to her about it, and I think they have an open relationship. And so then some of the other guys in the room are like, oh, well, I don't really have that issue, with being with a girl and having to come out to her and still wanting to be with her while, being with other people. But I have had, some out gay men that say, hey, I have a boyfriend, but I want to be in an open relationship. And so there are some commonalities there, but some differences that do arise. And then even there were some guys there who just really wanted to listen because they were bisexual and didn't really know where they fit in the conversation. And so just kind of trying to figure that out, while there were some out gay men who can dominate the conversation. And so I think there's definitely differences of issues, but that's what we like to do, is serve a place where folks can come wherever they are and kind of help each other grow.
Okay, now, Patti, when you're talking about toxic masculinity, are you talking about it in the gay community or like in a business environment? Okay, so you're talking about what types of things, what types of behaviors?
Toxic masculinity shows itself in many, many forms. There's a hyper he-man kind of approach that many men today take, and I think it's something that they probably learned from their fathers. I don't know that they get it later in life. That's why I say it's from their fathers, because it's something that you kind of comes with you.
Fathers or their role models, whatever, when they're younger.
Right,
Is what you're saying.
and just like over the top. And sometimes I have to wonder if some of these men are overcompensating in many ways for many things. But it's a problem out there, and if you're a woman, you see it all the time. You see it every day, everywhere.
Okay, and so in the gay community, you're talking about what types of behaviors?
Well, I think it's the same, because even in our conversation, misogyny came up quite a bit, and how, that can rear its ugly head in the gay community. And one of the great things about the conversation that we had, it focused on, feminine and masculine, but as that relates to men and women. And I think it's really the same. It's the macho, hyper masculine guy that's, often heavily sought after in the gay community. And it's kind of become somewhat of a fetish, which I think that was one of the things that came up. But I think at the basis of it is the same thing. And that's what the group was able to see, because oftentimes you do find that gay men are emulating women, and so it's really just the same stuff, different channel, same show, different channel.
I think a lot of men do ask themselves, especially maybe gay men, ask themselves early on, what does it mean to be a man? And I think they get messaging in a lot of different ways from a lot of different sources. But if you look at just our media and television, and certainly as I remember in growing up in the 60s and 70s and 80s, it's like we had lots of action, TV where they picked up, well, that's what it must be to be a man.
Right.
Is a cop chasing somebody and gunning them down, and, that kind of thing. And it's concerning. It's concerning to me, because I think in that mindset also comes an enormous amount of misogyny. There's not anything anywhere even close to equality between men and women.
Right.
I mean, when we have to hear the little lady stuff, hey, little lady.
So you get upset when I call you my little lady?
But you never do.
Oh, okay. Is that something that you personally ever had to deal with? I know Josh certainly not, but I'm sorry I'm picking on you so much today. But you're standing next to me, so
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, right there.
At its finest.
Dave's the picture of it.
Yeah, I never thought about and never really cared what other people thought of me in that way.
Right.
Yeah, I've never really cared much either, but I mean, it is something that I've dealt with. Like, even, this is one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily want to be in church anymore, is because having long hair as a child, I got some of the worst hate. A lot of the folks at church told me I was walking around looking like a question mark. And it was like, I didn't know what that meant. I thought I was just a little boy with long hair, but apparently I was a question mark. And so that made me struggle with so many things. But
I look at you and I see more of an exclamation point.
Why, thank you. So I think, when it comes to toxic masculinity, it's toxic at all levels, whether it's in a gay community, straight community, with men, women, and it rears its ugly head when it comes to gay men as masculine versus feminine, or tops and bottoms. That's a whole nother conversation. And so it's...
But I think, too, if you look at society at large, and you think toxic masculinity, and in opposition to that, I think oftentimes of, say, a straight man who is perfectly comfortable around gay men.
Yeah.
They're self-secure. They don't have the insecurities that men who are toxically masculine have, where they're overboard, they're over the top, in every possible way.
Speaking about over.
Yes. Over. We're
done. I want to thank you for being here with us today, Jalenzski, and come back. It's always a pleasure to have you on and
thank you for having me.
Chat. We'll be back next week. Our guest is Amber Roman. She's the new LGBT liaison to the Dallas Police Department.
I love that.
And have a good week. We'll see you next Sunday.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.